We're 3 races into Nico Hulkenberg's return to F1 with Haas, and already both Haas and Hulk have justified the team's decision to drop Mick Schumacher at the end of 2022. Hulkenberg has already scored 7 points compared to Magnussen's 1, but it's the quali stats that I think are the most surprising. I don't know about anyone else, but going into the season I actually expected Kmag to have the advantage in quali over Hulk, but then in the races, because of how erratic and inconsistent Kmag can be sometimes, I always thought that the calm consistency of Hulk would pay him back there. But actually, it's in quali where Hulk has dominated so far. Now, of course, I'll throw out the caveat that we are 3 races into the season so far, so this is a super small sample size, but keep in mind that over the course of 2022, Kmag had an average qualifying gap of 0.364 seconds over Mick, and so far this season, Hulk has had an average of over half a second over Kmag. I actually went back to see what I said around the time that all of this was kicking off, and whilst I said that I would give Mick Schumacher 1 more season, I also totally understood why Haas and Günther Steiner just wanted an experienced driver that would bring less drama. I definitely wasn't in the camp of fans online who were absolutely slating Haas and Steiner for bringing Hulk back. And going into the season, I think my trust for Hulk actually grew because in my 2023 season predictions, I actually predicted him to finish ahead of Kmag on his return to Formula 1. And now I do also want to mention Mick because whilst Haas have justified their decision, and there is no argument that anyone can make now that keeping Mick would have somehow turned out better than it has so far, that doesn't mean that automatically everything and all of the mistakes that Haas made with the way that they mismanaged Mick also get justified as well. The Mick-Haas situation to me was simple. Mick was a decent driver who just landed at the wrong team for where he was at that stage of his career. Haas just aren't a team who are suited for young drivers. They are a team who don't have the comfort of being a manufacturer or having a massive budget, and that already puts pressure on the drivers before they even step into the car. On the Mick side, there was just so much that was going on. His name brought pressure just in itself. His massive incidents writing off 2 chassis were just magnified in the cost cap era, and on top of that, it wasn't as if he was scoring semi-regular points even when the car was good during the early part of the season that could almost justify crashing as much as he did. I also really didn't like the way some of his inner circle, like his uncle Ralf Schumacher, tried to defend him in the media with some really bizarre comments towards Günther Steiner, which to me just made things even worse. On the team side, Günther Steiner just didn't have the managerial ability to know how to get the best out of a young driver who was really feeling the pressure. He tried the arm around the shoulder, he tried the kick up the backside, and it was clear that although Mick did actually get better towards the end of the season, it was too little too late to make a difference. All of those mistakes that came from both sides meant that for 2023, Haas just wanted a driver who more than anything else would just bring less noise and less attention to the team. Hulk was a boring choice, and I mean that in a good way, in the sense that after the chaos that surrounded the team in 2021 with Mazepin and 2022 with Schumacher, I think a quiet, boring 2023 is kind of what they wanted. In the opening few races, there have been signs of genuine quality and also a bit of rustiness after 3 years out the sport. In Bahrain, despite a mega qualifying starting in P10, whilst his teammate was out in Q1, at the start of the race he made the slightest bit of contact with Ocon, which forced him to change his front wing and ended any chance of points there and then. Jeddah was actually a solid result in P12 when you consider that his teammate, who finished in the points, was only a few places ahead in P10, and also because only Stroll out of the top 4 teams retired out of the race, and so there was only 3 points paying positions left up for grabs. In Australia, everything came together. Quali was strong yet again, starting in P10, and it was actually Kmag who was nowhere near Hulkenberg all weekend and qualified 7/10ths slower. His pace in the race was also very impressive. he managed to stay relatively close to the Gasly-Sainz battle. He also had a really good scrap with Lando, and even though he did end up losing out to the McLaren, he was still on his way to some pretty good points. In a race with 3 different grid starts, this is where his experience I think really came through to attack when he could, but not to take too many risks. Leaving this race, I think it will be bittersweet for Hulkenberg and Haas because after the Gasly-Sainz crash at the end of the final restart, Hulkenberg actually worked his way up to 4th place, and had Sainz still received his 5-second penalty at the line, that would have bumped up Nico Hulkenberg to the podium. In the end, it wasn't meant to be as the FIA took the order on countback, and even though Haas tried to lodge an appeal, it still meant that Hulkenberg would finish in 7th place, but that hunt for his first career podium still continues. After 3 races, that puts Hulkenberg 9th in the standings above Charles Leclerc, which somehow is both depressing and hilarious all at the same time. Kmag is only in 17th and the team overall is 7th between Alpine and Alfa Romeo. Australia is the exact type of scenario where you can point to and say that is why they brought in Nico Hulkenberg. Now, don't get me wrong, Kmag is a quality driver and he's gonna have plenty of good performances, but there's also no denying that he does have a tendency to be a bit erratic and produce a stinker once in a while. Even last year, we saw that as good as the highs were, like the P5 finish on his surprise return, and then of course that incredible pole position in Sao Paulo, there were also a few moments where I literally had to tell myself, Kmag, what are you doing? It usually came on lap 1 up against Lewis and Max, when he decided to attack cars that were half a second quicker than him, and ended up losing his front wing and ruining his race. Now, no one is trying to say that you need to be a pushover and be waving cars through, but if you lose your front wing battling an Alpine or a McLaren, then I get it. When you lose your front wing trying to attack a Red Bull or Mercedes, is that really the smartest thing to be doing on lap 1? It's these lapses of concentration that I think just let him down, but with Kmag, you get the good with the bad, and that's kind of the driver he is. Australia was just another one of these random moments, but with Hulkenberg now with the team, it seems like during these erratic moments, at least there's a calmer head on the other side of the garage that can still be there to pick up the pieces. Going forward, I think the combination of Hulkenberg and Kmag at the very least is going to be a solid partnership, and despite the memes of Hungary 2017, I don't expect there to honestly be any friction. Having said that, both drivers are out of contract at the end of 2023, with Hulkenberg having an option for 2024, but only on the team side. This is where Günther Steiner will need to show that he's actually learned anything after how badly it ended between Grosjean and Kmag. In that scenario, both drivers were always chasing contracts each year, but instead of working together, it always seemed like their primary motivation was just to beat their teammate first and help the team second. If any kind of tension does arise either on or off the track, Günther needs to put his drivers in a comfortable place mentally that the best way for them to get a contract extension is by working together. The drivers need to be reassured that their value to the team is in how well they work together as a pairing, instead of how much better they are than the other driver. When you have that trust between teammates and within the team, it takes pressure off everyone, including the drivers, and I think you avoid some of the mistakes that the team made with Mick in 2022. And now, again, Hulk and Kmag are 2 experienced, mature drivers, and I don't expect it to get to a point where the team has to sit them down to do emotional management. But if they do, let's just say that I wouldn't exactly pick Günther Steiner to be the person that I would choose to boost my confidence after a rough day. More than anything, I think the addition of Hulkenberg, and with how well he started, it's just injected a sense of calmness into the team. After the last few years, they've made nothing but headlines for all of the wrong reasons, but hopefully 2023 can be a more boringly quiet season where the team and the drivers can just get their heads down and focus on racing without so much noise distracting them. Regardless of what you think of Haas and regardless of what you think of Günther Steiner, even if you're a Mick Schumacher fan, you can still feel angry at the way they managed Mick. But there is a lot of people right now that are eating a lot of humble pie by the fact that the decision to drop Mick in favor of Hulk has basically been vindicated after 3 races.